one thing I observed is that, we as human beings are quite capable of solving problems and catastrophes that are in front of us, and very incapable and almost incompetent when it comes to things that are further away on the horizon. At the same time, the optimist will say, well, hey, we have technology, the technology, whatever you want to call it, that technology sort of hype. And hey, Malthus was proven wrong when he claimed that population will exceed and will run out of food. So why should climate change be any different?
Well, Malthus made a fundamental mistake in that he wasn't actually talking about population size. He was talking about population density.
That's true.
He was just noticing that in his particular part of the world, all the undesirables were moving in greater numbers. That was a redistribution. And that may have informed and misled some of his calculations. In terms of technology, of course we've got technology. That's kind of the problem. I don't consider myself a Luddite. Before you started rolling, we were talking about, best laptop I should get for VR. So it's not like I'm anti-technology by any means.
Right.
But the problem is that we have caveman brains.
Yeah.
With caveman agendas and caveman horizons of relevance, with our hands on technology that can change the world. If I give somebody a choice between $5 today and $20 in 2 weeks, most people would choose $5 today.
Yeah.
The technical term for that is hyperbolic discounting, and it makes a lot of sense in unpredictable environments where you never know whether the guy with the 20 is going to get schmucked by a bus or eaten by a tiger or something, right?
Right.
The flip side of that is that it gives you absolutely no ability to internalize long-distance consequences. And that's why even now, people in relatively progressive and non-climate change denying parts of the world are still unwilling to spend as much as the price of 2 lattes a month to fight climate change, because 2 lattes a month is something they got to pay now, and catastrophe's 20 years away. It's not even real as far as the gut is concerned. But I don't think that's a bias for pessimism. I think that's a bias for paranoia.
Explain that.
I think natural selection favors the paranoid.
Yeah.
But pessimism, I think that we as a species are wired for delusional optimism. They have done a number, there's a growing body of research suggesting that the people who are most objective amongst our numbers, the people who are best at assessing their own level of influence in local and social environments with unknown variables, the people who are most accurate at attributing blame and credit in local situations, are the clinically depressed. The rest of us, for example, if something good happens to us, we will tend to take credit for that. If something bad happens to us, we tend to look for something else to blame. The clinically depressed don't.
Misattribution bias.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And I find it very telling that the people amongst us who are empirically the most objective are those that we describe as victims of a pathology. In fact, we are so hardwired for optimism. You see people like Guillermo del Toro showing up in Time magazine a few months ago saying, optimism is the radical choice. There's a whole fucking subgenre now of science fiction called hope punk.
Really?
You've heard of cyberpunk, dieselpunk, steampunk. Well, now there's hope punk, because now wishful thinking apparently is edgy. Now delusional optimism is some kind of bullshit.
Oh, man.
Del Toro is wrong. Optimism is not the radical option. Optimism is the default option. As some guy on Reddit said, everybody fantasizes about being Mad Max. Nobody fantasizes about being one of the skulls piled up in the background. And
so then isn't that just a survival mechanism? Aren't all these traits just helping the human survive, and that's
Well,
what we're
of
supposed
course.
to
I
do.
mean, natural selection promotes paranoia, but it also promotes hope, even when there's no empirical basis for that hope. Because if you actually, in an environment where predation and disease and high mortality, infant mortality is rampant, which is to say, throughout most of our evolutionary history, anybody who actually had an accurate view of their chances would probably curl up into a puddle of perspiration and just wait to die. So there is and again, if you're interested, I can show you the actual citations where people actually point out that we are delusionally optimistic and that this does have survival values, not because you are actually going to be Mad Max. You're not. You're going to be one of the skulls. But because it ups your chances of survival if you think you're going to be Mad Max. People who believe in free will tend to perform better on exams, for example.
Yep.
This belief in yourself, oddly enough, can be kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy. But it's still delusional. I mean, the idea of a cognitive bias is twofold. The first is that it evolved to help us survive.
Of course.
But the second part is that by definition, it's a bias. So we are enthralled. We are essentially a bundle of literally hundreds of cognitive biases that help us survive by lying to us about the way the world works. And that's kind of the problem we face now, because we're capable of reshaping the world. We no longer are at the mercy of our environment. Our environment is at our mercy.
Right.
But we're still working on the basis of very ancient programs that are starting from a completely different premise. And I think that's the root of our problem at this point.